Chapter 7. Ricardo's Repentance. The Queen, as it happened, fortunately, was lunching with one of the ladies of her court. Ricardo did not come down to luncheon, and Jaqueline ate hers alone, and very mournfully she felt. The prince had certainly not come well out of the adventure. He had failed, as all his attempts to restore the Stuarts always did. He had been wounded, though he had never received a scratch in any of his earlier exploits. And if his honor was safe, the good intentions fully understood, that was chiefly due to Jaqueline and to the generosity of King James and Prince Charles. "I wonder what he's doing," she said to herself, and at last she went up and knocked on Ricardo's door. "Go away," he said. "I don't want to see anybody. Who is it?" "It's only me, Jaqueline." "Go away. I want nobody." "Do let me in, dear Dick. I have good news for you," said the princess. "What is it?" said Ricardo, unlocking the door. "And why do you bother a fellow so?" He had been crying. His hand obviously hurt him badly. He looked, and indeed he was, very sulky. "How did you get to England, Dick?" asked the princess, taking no notice of his bandaged hand. "Oh, don't ask me," said Ricardo. "I've not been to England at all." "Why, what happened?" "Everything that is horrid happened," said Dick. And then, unable to keep it any longer to himself, he said, "I've failed to keep my promise. I've been insulted. I've been beaten by a fellow younger than myself. And oh, how my hand does hurt. And I've got such a headache. What am I to say to my mother when she asks why my arm is in a sling? And what will my father say? I'm quite broken down and desperate. I think I'll run away to sea." And indeed, he looked very wild and miserable. "Tell me how it all happened, Dick," said the princess. "I'm not sure it's not how bad as you make it out. Perhaps I can help you." "How can a girl help a man?" And poor Jaqueline, remembering how she had helped him at the risk of her own life, when King James nearly crushed her in the shape of a mosquito, turned her head away and cried silently. "I'm a beast," said Dick. "I beg your pardon, Jack dear. You are always a trump, I will say. But I don't see what you can do." Then he told her all of the story, which of course she knew perfectly well already, except the part played by the mosquito, of which she could not be aware. "I was sure it was not as bad as you made it out, Dick," she said. "You see, the old king, who is not very wise, but is a perfectly honorable gentleman, gave you the highest praise." She thought of lecturing him a little about disobeying his father, but it did not seem like a good opportunity. Besides, Jaqueline had been lectured herself lately, and had not enjoyed it either. "What am I to say to Mother?" Dick repeated. "We must say something," said Jaqueline. "I can't tell my mother anything but the truth," Ricardo went on. "Here's my hand, how it does sting, and she must find out." "I think I can cure it," said Jaqueline. "Did you say Prince Charles gave you his own sword?" "Yes, here it is, but what has that got to do with it?" "Everything in the world to do with it, my dear Dick. How lucky it was that he gave it to you." And she ran to her own room and brought the golden baskets which contained her medicines. Taking out a small vial marked in letters in emerald, "Weapon Salve," the princess drew the bright sword, extracted a little of the ointment from the vial, and spread it on a soft silk handkerchief. "What are you going to do with the sword?" asked Ricardo. "Polish it a little," said Jaqueline, smiling, and she began to rub it with the salve and to the point of the rapier. As she did so, Ricardo's arm ceased to hurt, and the look of pain passed from his mouth. "Why, I feel quite better," he said. "I can use my hand as well as ever." Then he took off the stained handkerchief, and lo, there was not even a mark where the wound had been. For this was the famous weapon salve, which you may have read about in Sir Kingham Digby, and which the Lady of Branksome used in the Lay of the Last Minstrel. But the secret of making it has long been lost, except in Pantouflia. "You are the best girl in the world, Jaqueline," he said. "You may give me a kiss if you like." And I won't call you Jack or laugh at you reading books anymore. There's something in books after all. The princess did not take advantage of Dick's permission, but advised him to lie down and try to sleep. I say, though, he said, what about my father? The king need never be told anything about it, said Jaqueline. Need he? Oh, that won't do. I tell my father everything. But then, I never had anything like this to tell him before. Don't you think, Jaqueline, you might break it to him? He's very fond of you. Just tell him what I told you, and it's every word of it's true, and he ought to know. He might see something about it in the Marquis de France. This was the newspaper of the period. I don't think it will get into the papers, said Jaqueline, smiling. Nobody could tell except the king and the princess, and they have reasons for keeping it to themselves. I don't trust that younger one, said Dick moodily. I don't care for that young man. Anyway, my father must be told, and if you won't, I must. Well, I'll tell him, said Jaqueline, and now lie down till evening. After dinner in the conservatory, Jaqueline told King Prigio all about it. His Majesty was very much moved. What extraordinary bad luck that family has, he thought. If I had not changed the rug, the merest accidents, Prince Charles would have dined with St. James tonight, and King George in Hanover. It was the very nearest thing. This meddling with political affairs will never do, he said aloud. Dick has had a lesson, sire, said the princess. He says he'll never mix himself up with politics again, whatever happens. And he says he means to study all about them, for he feels frightfully ignorant, and above all, he means to practice his fencing. These remarks were not part of the conversation between Ricardo and Jaqueline, but she considered that Dick really meant what he said this. Well, that's as well as far as that goes, said the king. But Jaqueline, about that mosquito, for she had told him this part of the adventure. That was a very convenient mosquito, though I don't know how Dick was able to observe it from any distance. I see your hand in that, my dear, and I'm glad you make such a kind and wise use of the lessons from the good fairy Parabenu, Jaqueline, he added solemnly, laying his hand on her head. You have saved the honor of Pantouflia, which is dearer to me than life. Without your help, I tremble to think what might have happened. The princess blushed very much, and felt very happy. Now, run away to the queen, my dear, said his majesty. I want to think things over. He did think them over, and the more he thought, the more he felt the inconvenience attending the possession of fairy things. An eclipse one day, nearly possible as a revolution soon after, he said to himself. But for Jaqueline, Ricardo's conduct would have been blazed abroad. England would have been irritated. It is true she cannot get at Pantouflia very easy, as we have no sea-coast. We are surrounded by friendly countries, but it would have been a ticklish and discreditable position. I must really speak to Dick, which he did the next morning after breakfast. You have broken my rules, Ricardo, he said. There is no great harm done, and you have confessed frankly. But how am I to trust you any longer? I give you my sacred word of honor, father, that I'll never meddle with politics again, or start an expedition without telling you. I've had enough of it, and I'll turn over a new leaf. I've learned to be ashamed of my ignorance, and I've sent for friend Slaza, and I'll fence every day, and read like everything. Very good, said the king. I believe you mean what you say. Now go to your fencing lesson. But I say, father, cried Ricardo, was it not strange about the magic carpet? I told you not to trust these things, said the king. Some enchanter may have deprived it of its power. It may be worn out. Someone may have substituted a common Persian rug. Anything may happen. You must learn to depend on yourself. Now, be off with you. I'm busy. And remember, you don't stir without my permission. The prince ran off, and presently the sounds of stamping feet and "Un, deux, double, desengage, vite, contre de cartes," and so forth might be heard over a great part of the royal establishment.